Assessing how much your property is worth. Anticipating selling your property yet don't have the foggiest idea about its fairly estimated worth. Presently, while we propose that property valuation is best left to confirmed experts, monitoring how much the property is worth can be gainful to property owners such as yourself. How might I find out how much my property is worth? On the off chance that you are having contemplations about selling your home, you should initially realize how to appropriately show up at the assessed worth of your property. What a great many people do in such a case is to promptly counsel an expert real estate appraiser for sound guidance as they approach private industry databases. However, it is smarter to have your hand in the issue as it is your property that is in question. Nobody needs to lose in an arrangement, especially a monetary arrangement as dangerous as a real estate property. There are endless ways you can go to guarantee that your home is appropriately appraised. Nonetheless, note that property valuation, as much as any valuation procedure existing in the land business, is consistently an estimation. Precision is never the situation, as the value of your property is rarely fixed and is valued differently diversely at various situations. Understanding the appraisal of your property. The primary thing you ought to recollect is that your property's worth is constantly founded on its present market value. As per the Philippine Valuation Standards, the Philippines' variation of the International Valuation Standards, market value is the estimated amount for which a property should exchange on the date of valuation between a willing buyer and a willing seller in an arm's-length transaction after proper marketing wherein the parties have each acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without compulsion. The significant term to detract from this is date of the valuation, which implies that your property can be valued diversely at different times. The most effective method to know your property's worth. Indicated below are the common methods utilized when appraising property. Income capitalization. In the event that you're anticipating the value of your business and investment properties, at that point the income capitalization technique is the one to be utilized. This strategy evaluates income producing by applying income multipliers or capitalization rates to the net operating income, NOI, of the property. The formulae for capitalization rate and NOI are as per the following. Capitalization rate equals annual net operating income divided by cost or value. NOI equals gross potential income, vacancy plus collection costs, operating expenses. Expenses. As said before, the market estimation of the property can for the most part be a quite precise pointer of your property's worth. One of the factors which influence the market value of the property is the land value. Land value is usually found at available market value of the region where the property is found. The market value of the property ought to be viewed as particular from the zonal value, which is a worth built up by the legislature. In case you're attempting to appreciate house and lots, it is ideal to initially set up the various estimations of the land and the structure, with its improvements, independently before computing the total sales comparison. This strategy centers around understanding the selling costs of comparative properties situated in a similar region as yours. More often than not, the costs can be acquired through public records, real estate brokers, appraisers or individual requests. While this technique would doubtlessly not yield precise outcomes as the properties probably won't be comparable to yours, it gives you a superior thought on the best way to value your property. Factors, for example, lot size, number of washrooms, and date of sale differ from property to property, so you need to modify the worth dependent on your comparison. The principal thought of this strategy is to recreate the value of your property by utilizing the valuation of others, with adjustments to make them same as yours. While utilizing these techniques won't yield you a similar answer that a licensed real estate appraiser will give, you can utilize these strategies to assist yourself in understating your property's value. For homeowners who need to know the value of the property, the cost approach is the most suggested as the worth is the simplest to acquire. Any changes to the property, in the case of improving or devaluing in nature, ought to consistently be considered each time you make an assessment. Recollect that these strategies are just here to fill in as a guide on how you can appraise your property's worth. You can generally investigate different alternatives to show signs of improvement comprehension of the subject, for example, joining a portion of the strategies discovered above or utilizing an entire other technique completely. In any case, on the off chance that you are setting up your property available in the market, it is recommended to first get advice from a licensed real estate appraiser. Anticipation. The current value of the property is reliant on the foreseen benefits the purchaser will collect in possessing it. In this rule, you ought to be talented and refreshed in knowing national, regional, local, and neighborhood trends that can impact future income or utility of the property. For instance, an apartment suite might not have been profitable before, but since the development of infrastructures and the growing of commercial and business establishments around the region, the income of the property will increase and, along these lines, influence its property value. Change. The principle of anticipation is closely related to the principle of change. This principle is basically about being aware of the economic, social, political, and environmental forces that are constantly changing and affect the value of the property. The forces impact the market value of a property a great deal. One must then be careful in analyzing the direction these factors will take. Also, this is the reason why property value estimates must be made always with a specified date. Substitution. If the asking price for a home is more than what it would cost to construct one, no one will ever buy that home. For example, a vacant lot can be purchased in a particular subdivision where a house of a certain type and size can be constructed in it for about PHP 400,000. This will set the limit or ceiling price for all the fully furnished houses of the same size for sale around the area. Value can only be increased if the house for sale has distinguishing features like providing a great view of the lake nearby or a panoramic view of the city. Contribution. The value of an improvement is dependent on how it adds or contributes market value to the whole property, and not how much the improvement costs. For example, most people who sell real estate have this belief that spending money to enhance the property will increase its market value. They add swimming pool adjacent to the property to make it more appealing or add a landscape of exotic shrubs and ornaments. However, this is not always the case, as there are buyers who do not desire these particular enhancements and, thus, the improvements made do not add up to the market value of the property, or worse, make the property even less desirable. This takes into account the relevant market value in the area where the property is located. The principle of substitution is the basis of this method and always refers to the general rule where site value plus production costs of the improvement set the upper limit to the property value. The cost approach requires a certain assumptions, such as the availability of nearby properties. Nearby properties are necessary to make a comparison. If there are no available properties to compare with, the value must be estimated. Residential real estate usually does not use this approach. An exception is when the property is unimproved or over-improved compared to the houses in the given neighborhood. This is very easy to understand. Consider, for example, going to the public market to buy fruit. What indicates the price of a fruit is the price of similar fruit being sold in the area. Take that principle to real estate and you understand what sales comparison approach is. However, because individual real estate all have unique qualities, close comparisons are difficult. Moreover, sales data for specialized property may be non-existing or sketchy at best. But if data are complete and available, the sales comparison approach is generally considered the best and most used method in appraising residential properties in the real estate market. The sales comparison approach uses two steps. First, a collection of data on sales of similar properties, and the other one is the adjustment of the sales data to make them reflect the subject property as accurately as possible. Data related to physical and location characteristics, financing arrangements, conditions of the sale, and market conditions at the time of sale must be modified accordingly. Insights. While appraisal methods are reliable as they give an estimated valuation of your property, the only real test of how much your property is worth at any given moment is the price someone is willing to pay for it. Sometimes the buyer can afford a price higher than what you have in mind, so it is always advisable to keep silent and ask the buyer first how much he can spend, and from there, adjust the transaction price. Most often sellers discover this too late and end up short selling themselves.